Hey there, IELTS learners. Welcome back to IELTS Time, the channel where we explore model answers, brainstorm ideas, and build the kind of vocabulary you need for a high score in IELTS speaking. Today's topic is something we've all experienced at some point: embarrassment. We'll listen in on a sample Part 3 interview between Joseph and Jessica from our team. After that, I'll highlight some of the phrases and ideas Joseph uses that you can borrow or build on in your own responses. Let's get started.
Why do people feel embarrassed?
Well, I think people feel embarrassed when they believe they've done something that goes against social norms or expectations. It's often tied to how others might perceive us, like if we make a mistake in public or say something awkward, we immediately become self-conscious. I guess it's just a natural emotional response that helps us fit in with society. For example, if someone trips while walking or forgets what they were about to say during a presentation, they might feel a wave of embarrassment, even if others don't really care. It's less about the actual mistake and more about the fear of being judged.
What are some common situations where people feel embarrassed?
I think embarrassment can happen in all kinds of everyday situations. One common example is when someone says something incorrect in front of a group, like mispronouncing a word or giving the wrong answer. People also feel embarrassed if they accidentally break something in public or if their phone rings loudly during a serious meeting. Even small things like having food stuck in your teeth or waving at someone who wasn't actually waving at you. Those moments tend to trigger that awkward feeling. It's usually when something unexpected makes us feel exposed or judged.
Do you think embarrassment is always a negative emotion?
I'd argue no, not always. While it certainly feels negative in the moment, that hot flush and wanting the ground to swallow you up, it can actually serve a positive social function. It's a signal that we've perhaps crossed a line or made a mistake, which can then prompt us to reflect on our actions and adjust our behavior to better fit social norms. So, in that sense, it can be a useful self-regulating emotion that helps us navigate social interactions more effectively.
Do people in different cultures get embarrassed by different things?
Absolutely, I think so. While some things might be universally embarrassing, like public mistakes, the specifics definitely vary. Cultural norms and values play a huge role. For example, in some cultures, public displays of affection might be highly embarrassing, whereas in others, they're perfectly normal. Similarly, topics like money, family issues, or even certain types of humor can cause embarrassment in one culture but not another, depending on how openly those things are discussed or perceived. It really highlights how deeply intertwined our emotions are with our cultural upbringing.
How can people cope with embarrassing situations?
I think the best way to cope is to acknowledge it and move on. Trying to ignore it or pretend it didn't happen often makes it worse. A quick, light-hearted apology or even just a small laugh at yourself can diffuse the tension. Also, reminding yourself that most people are far too focused on their own lives to dwell on your embarrassing moment helps. It's usually a much bigger deal in your own head than it is to anyone else. And finally, learning from it if there's a lesson to be learned and then letting it go.
Can embarrassing experiences help people grow emotionally?
Definitely, I believe they can. While uncomfortable, embarrassing experiences often force us to confront our own imperfections and our public image, this can lead to increased self-awareness and a better understanding of social dynamics. It can also build resilience. Once you've been through a few mortifying moments and survived, you realize you're tougher than you thought. Ultimately, these experiences can help us develop a more realistic and perhaps even more compassionate view of ourselves and others, making us more emotionally mature.
That was Joseph giving us a really thoughtful and well-rounded set of answers on today's IELTS speaking topic, embarrassment. What stands out most about his performance is how grounded and natural his responses are, which is exactly what makes for a high-scoring answer in part 3 of the test. Let's break down his approach for each question. The first question is, why do people feel embarrassed? Joseph explains that embarrassment usually isn't about the actual mistake itself, but more about the fear of being judged by others. He talks about feeling self-conscious and describes it as a wave of embarrassment, that sudden, overwhelming feeling we all recognise. His answer really highlights how embarrassment often comes from breaking social norms or worrying about how others see us. The next question is, what are some common situations where people feel embarrassed? Joseph gives some very relatable examples, like mispronouncing a word in public, having your phone ring loudly during a serious meeting, or waving at someone who wasn't actually waving at you. He uses natural phrases like awkward feeling and feeling exposed to describe those moments when we suddenly become aware that all eyes might be on us. It's a great reminder that embarrassment often strikes in everyday situations, especially when we're caught off guard. The third question is, do you think embarrassment is always a negative emotion? Joseph offers a thoughtful perspective here. He admits that embarrassment feels unpleasant, like a hot flush and the urge to disappear. But he also explains that it can serve a positive purpose. He describes it as a self-regulating emotion, meaning it helps us realise when we've crossed a social line so we can reflect and adjust our behaviour. This kind of emotional insight adds real depth to his answer, something examiners look for in high-scoring responses. The fourth question is, do people in different cultures get embarrassed by different things? Joseph explains that while some situations, like falling over, are universally embarrassing, cultural norms heavily influence what people find awkward. For example, public displays of affection may be normal in one culture, but totally inappropriate in another. He uses the phrase cultural upbringing to describe how our background shapes the way we respond emotionally. It's a great demonstration of how to bring a cultural dimension into your answer without overcomplicating things. The fifth question is, how can people cope with embarrassing situations? Joseph gives a really practical answer here. He suggests simply acknowledging the moment and moving on, maybe even laughing at yourself to ease the tension. He also reminds us that most people are too focused on their own lives to dwell on your mistake, so it often feels like a bigger deal than it really is. That kind of calm, realistic advice makes the answer feel genuine and relatable, just what examiners want to hear. And the final question is, can embarrassing experiences help people grow emotionally? Joseph wraps up with a mature and reflective response. He explains that embarrassing moments help us confront our imperfections and grow stronger emotionally. He talks about how they build resilience, increase self-awareness, and even help us develop more compassion, both for ourselves and for others. It's a strong, well-rounded answer that shows not just fluency, but also depth of thought. That's all for today's lesson on the topic of embarrassment. Join us next time as we explore a Part 1 topic, the sky. Until then, keep practicing, stay focused, and good luck with your IELTS journey. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos. See you next time.